Okay, so day four of the COPA trial just ended. Just going through my notes for the day, there's a few things that I noticed that were kind of interesting. Well, one thing that it sort of impressed me, I guess, just early on, there's a discussion about particular document. I think Craig just offhand cited the specific IP address, like just knew the number off by heart and cited it, like referenced it from memory, which just kind of impressed me. I thought that was like just showed how prepared Craig is for this case. That he has an IP address memorized in his head for a specific document. I mean, granted, he knows he's going to be examined about those documents, but like he has the IP address memorized. Um, yeah, it's just kind of interesting. It was an IP address associated with Ira Kleiman. Um, let's see. There was another thing that kind of stood out to me, where in talking about, I think, an email, a document contained within the email, the lawyer was questioning him on why he hadn't explicitly mentioned that it was a fake document. Um, and Craig's reply to that was that it was a document that was that he'd already stated in the previous testimony was fake, so that it was on the record. He didn't believe that he had to. It kind of just made the couple look foolish, almost like they hadn't done their homework. This was a document that was also in the Ira Kleiman case, and he was saying that in that case he had said this about that document. So it was almost, I don't know if they're trying to just trap him or if they hadn't done their homework. It seems highly unlikely that COPA hasn't done their homework, so I thought that was odd. Um, but it kind of plays into what happened next, I guess. It was shortly after that, I think, Craig got into a disagreement with something with the COPA lawyer, but the judge kind of interjected and directed Craig to focus on the claims of the Madden report rather than the process of the Madden report, because essentially Craig was arguing with the methods used by Madden in his report to come to his determinations. And the judge pretty much had to say that uh, he might not agree with the findings of the expert, Madden, but it's the court's expert. The court is going to um, pretty much follow those findings. So it's kind of just pointing Craig in the right direction, kind of just setting him, like, you might want to focus on the findings rather than the process. But that actually kind of made me rethink what's been going on in the last few days. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any sort of paralegal or legal training whatsoever. But just as like a lay observer, I mean, court is kind of like it's a game. It's like a tennis court or a basketball court. Court of law it's a game. It's entirely a game, and you could think of all the evidence and the witness statements in the case as I mean, you could think of them as just like balls that are in play, and uh, really the thing here is that Craig has to convince the judge that he's Satoshi, and all of these different pieces of evidence. All Copo really has to do is create ambiguity around these documents and uncertainty, whereas Craig has to prove for certain that he is Satoshi. So there's a greater burden of proof here on Craig to prove he's Satoshi than there is for Copa to prove that he isn't, because it's the onus is on Craig. So really, all these pieces of evidence, these 20 documents that they have, their top 20 list of forgeries, suspected forgeries. Um, you could think of all of those as like key pieces, and each one of those pieces at the end of this trial will either be deemed ambiguous or it'll be deemed credible. It'll be an ambiguous document that the judge can't rely on to make his determination, or it'll be one that he can. So all of these pieces of evidence, they're either going to become at the end of the trial ambiguous and untrustworthy, or there's going to be a reasonable explanation for all of the metadata that's there, and Craig is going to demonstrate that, and then the judge can use that as evidence in favor for Craig. So you can kind of think of, I described it as a boxing match the other day, but it's just a court of law is not like a boxing match. There's always that evidence that we're talking about that's going to be weighed out at the end of the case, but there's also the possibility for a bombshell to happen. I mean, either side could come with some sort of bombshell. Who knows what that might be? I mean, it's not going to be new evidence introduced. It seems like there's such an abundance of evidence to go over already in the case that the judge, I'm certain, isn't going to allow either side to introduce new evidence. It would have to be something extraordinary. And it couldn't be something that they've withheld until now. That wouldn't be allowable. So really, I think the strategy here was something that I think Craig had pointed out that Ira was doing in his case as well, which is just creating uncertainty and doubt around him to try to discredit him. He was saying that it was something that Ira Kleinman was trying to do to him, but I think he was almost saying it in a way like, I know that that's what you're doing to me as well, where he was really just, I'm sure, I'm just sort of now thinking about these things, but I'm sure Craig's thought about them for months, but they just need to create enough uncertainty around his primary reliance documents that the judge can't act on those to make his determination at the end, that it has to be something that falls into the category of being ambiguous, where it's unclear whether or not the document may be authentic or may be reliable. So if that's the case, then I mean, it's not, any document that's ambiguous is not going to weigh in Craig's favor. It's going to go to the COPA side. You can kind of think of it like that, like each piece of evidence. I think what I'll do later on in the trial is I'll make like a graphic with all of these reliance documents for both sides, like the list of forged documents from COPA, and then Craig's primary reliance documents, kind of list them out. Look at the defenses that have been made by Craig for each of the inconsistencies that are cited in the Madden report for each of them, and then just kind of weigh out based on what we've seen in court, which piece of evidence the judge will be allowed to use in his determination and which ones he won't. Because I think COPA's really, their whole strategy here is just to make enough of these pieces of evidence ambiguous enough, to create enough uncertainty around these documents so the judge can't actually use it in his determination. So they're trying to leave so few balls in Craig's end of the court when this trial is done. The judge doesn't have enough to make a definitive determination, where the judge might really suspect that Craig is Satoshi, but he doesn't have enough real evidence presented by Craig to do that. Which, I mean, there's certain things that have come up where yesterday he was describing a book that he'd written, which I mean, in that book it outlines how hidden watermarks can pretty much be hidden within text and documents. And I know there's just some speculation online that there might be some sort of hidden watermark hidden in the white paper. I mean, that seems unlikely to me, but you never know. I mean, I'm just, that's really far out there to me. I think people that are putting forth that explanation, of course it's possible, but I think you're really reaching. Because I mean, why not just point to that right away and then just over? Then he doesn't have to move coins, like you said. He could just point it out and just, what's the point of the Dog and Pony show? Just point it out, right? So I think if there was a hidden watermark, I think the idea is just kind of silly. Like, just point it out, then no need for a trial. Just ask for everything to be settled outside of court. But I don't know, there could be something from COPA as well, like there's some sort of, something missing from COPA strategy. I think just throwing mud on these documents isn't enough. There has to be something else that they might try to pin him with. I know what I was saying about each of these pieces of evidence in the witness testimony that's going to be made. Each additional piece of testimony is like putting a new piece of evidence before the judge. So as Craig is talking, he's giving the judge more to consider. And that'll either be weighed in favor of Craig or against him. But I think what COPA's also doing is they're going to try to spin a narrative out of the statements that Craig is making now. So I think they want him to speak about certain things, get him to talk about certain things and then craft a narrative out of his responses. Um, Point to inconsistencies, things where he might not have known, act like it's convenient that he might not have known, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Like I said, if Craig can verify in court or verify in some way that things compile the way that he says they should, then those pieces of evidence, those go to Craig. Um, and I'm sure right now that people are testing all of this, and I mean, really, the next course of like reasoning would just be that if they're testing that, they would want to, if it does compile the way that Craig says it does, look for other ways to make it seem like a forgery. Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see when the experts start picking each other apart, or when Craig's team starts picking apart the Madden report. Like, the Madden report will either hold up under scrutiny, but I mean, they're gonna have to test both sides' claims, and I'm not sure how that would work either, because I'm unsure of how testing that in UK court would work. Would they bring in a machine in the court and then actually just verify that things work the way Craig explained they should? I would suggest that if Craig is saying that it does, that it will work the way he says, just because it's fucking Craig Wright. This guy knows his shit. This is why he's written these textbooks. Like, the guy knows what he's talking about. And he's probably more qualified than the experts the court has looking at it, which is just, it's bizarre. It really does raise a lot of questions, just that alone. Like, why aren't there, like, were there just no experts that were willing to take this on? Like, COPA went out and saw more qualified people, but they didn't want to do it. I'm kind of at a loss for that. That's a little strange to me, but yeah, well, I think at the end of each week I'll start making more detailed videos, just with some more detail about the specific evidence, what's been said about each particular piece of evidence, just a better breakdown like that. I have lots of time. I mean, if you have any comments or suggestions, leave them in the video. I'll answer any questions or comments people leave. If you have any suggestions, something you want me to cover or something you want me to mention or talk about, leave it there. I'll address everything. But, yeah, until tomorrow.